she only wanted to get home safely, with her baby asleep in her arms and hope in her heart. But to one flight attendant, her skin color was enough to question her place on that plane. In front of everyone, she was humiliated, accused, and forced to leave, while her child cried and no one dared to speak up. What no one knew was who she really was, and who was waiting for her on the ground. Because sometimes power hides behind silence, and justice, it lands when you least expect it. For Maya Johnson, flying had always been routine. As a marketing executive and mother of one, she'd spent years balancing deadlines and diaper bags, gracefully, quietly, without complaint. This flight was supposed to be simple, a 2-hour journey home after a business trip, back to her husband and the warm laughter of their little family. The morning had started peacefully. She arrived early, dressed neatly in a cream sweater and jeans, her baby nestled in a soft blue blanket. Other passengers smiled as she boarded. Some even offered to help with her stroller. Everything felt normal, ordinary. But beneath the calm, there was something different in the air. A tension she couldn't name, an unease that seemed to follow her from the check-in counter to her seat. The attendant's forced smile, the lingering stares from a few passengers. It was subtle, but it was there. Maya tried to shake it off. She'd learned, like so many black women before her, how to stay composed when the world questioned her right to belong. She focused on her baby, humming softly as the engines roared to life. Then, just minutes before takeoff, the whispers began. A flight attendant approached, her tone sharp but polite, asking questions that didn't make sense about her seat, her ticket, her right to be there. Maya answered calmly, holding her baby close, but every word she spoke seemed to make the woman's expression colder. The passengers nearby watched, unsure whether to intervene or pretend not to notice. Maya's hands trembled slightly, but her eyes stayed firm. She had no idea that this quiet moment, this ordinary flight, was about to become a public humiliation seen around the world. Because in a few short minutes, the calm would shatter. And the woman everyone ignored would remind an entire airline what power truly looks like. The flight had barely settled when the first spark of tension ignited. Maya adjusted her baby's blanket, humming softly as the plane filled with chatter and the hum of engines. But across the aisle, the flight attendant, Ms. Porter, her badge red, watched her closely. Too closely. Every time Maya reached for her bag or checked on her child, those eyes followed her, suspicious, sharp, searching for something that wasn't there. It started small. A question about her ticket, then another about her seat. "Are you sure you're supposed to be here?" Ms. Porter asked, voice wrapped in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Maya handed over her boarding pass again, her hands trembling slightly. The attendant studied it longer than necessary before muttering, "All right then," and walking off. Maya felt the stares, the quiet murmurs, the kind that scrape at dignity, subtle but cutting deep. She tried to stay calm, rocking her baby gently, pretending not to notice the judgment settling over her like a shadow. Minutes later, the attendant returned. This time her tone was louder, sharper. "Ma'am, we've had complaints about an uncooperative passenger. I'll need you to step off the plane." Maya blinked in disbelief. Uncooperative? Her voice cracked under the weight of confusion and humiliation. "I haven't done anything." The attendant's expression hardened. "Ma'am, please don't make this difficult." Passengers looked up now, some curious, others uncomfortable. A few whispered, some pulled out their phones. Maya's heart pounded as her baby began to cry. Startled by the tension, she tried to explain, but her words were swallowed by the noise, by the authority of a uniform that no one dared to question. A second attendant appeared, standing beside Ms. Porter like silent reinforcement. Together they blocked the aisle, leaving Maya trapped. "We can do this the easy way," one said, "or the hard way." Maya's face burned. Every eye on her, every whisper cutting deeper. She could feel her baby trembling against her chest, and that was when her fear turned to resolve. Slowly she stood. Not because she agreed, but because she refused to let her child see her break. "Fine," she said softly. "We'll go." The cabin fell silent. The sound of her baby's cry was the only thing that followed her down the narrow aisle as passengers turned away, some ashamed, some indifferent. One man tried to speak up, but a quick glare from the attendant silenced him. As Maya stepped off the plane, she felt the cold rush of air hit her face. The door closed behind her with a metallic thud, a sound that felt final. She stood in the empty jet bridge, shaking, humiliated, but not defeated. She didn't know it yet, but her name was already spreading online. A witness had uploaded the video, a clip of her being escorted off, baby in arms. By the time she reached the terminal, millions had seen it. And somewhere, thousands of miles away, her husband was watching too. By the time Maya reached the terminal, her humiliation had already gone viral. The short clip, 30 seconds of pain and injustice, was everywhere. A black mother clutching her crying baby, being escorted off a plane for doing nothing wrong. No anger, no violence, just quiet disbelief in her eyes. Within hours, hashtags began to spread. Justice for Maya. Flying while black. The world was watching. And so was her husband, David Johnson, CEO of the very airline that had thrown her out. He'd seen the video while in a meeting, unaware that the woman being humiliated on that screen was his wife. When he recognized her, when he saw his child's tiny hand reaching for comfort that never came, his blood ran cold. David didn't shout. He didn't storm out. He simply stood, turned to his board, and said, "That's my wife." The room went silent. The screens froze. The men who once spoke with power suddenly had nothing to say. Within hours, the call went out. The flight was grounded. Investigations launched. Every employee on that plane was summoned. And as the footage spread across the globe, the airline's name became synonymous with shame. For Maya, the pain wasn't just public, it was personal. She had done everything right, and still she was treated like she didn't belong. But as the world rallied around her, she felt something shift. For once, she wasn't invisible. Her voice mattered. Her story mattered. When David finally called her, his voice was steady, but the storm behind it was clear. "They'll never do this to you or anyone like you again." The world expected an apology. Instead, they got something else. A statement from the airline's CEO appeared online that evening. Just 12 words. "Effective immediately, all operations are suspended pending internal review." It was the sound of accountability and the first ripple of change. But what came next? No one could have predicted. The next morning, Maya woke up to a world that suddenly knew her name. News channels replayed the clip on loop. Talk shows debated it, and millions shared her story with outrage and disbelief. The woman who had once been quietly invisible, just another face in an airport crowd, had become a symbol of something far greater than one humiliating flight. But Maya didn't feel like a hero. Not yet. Her phone buzzed constantly. Messages from friends, strangers, journalists. Some offered love, others asked for interviews. But all she could think about was the moment her baby had started crying on that plane. The confusion in those tiny eyes. The helplessness she had felt. David came home that night. No press, no security, just a husband stepping through the door, carrying the weight of an empire's shame. He didn't say a word at first. He simply knelt beside her, took her hand, and whispered, "You didn't deserve this. None of you do." And that's when Maya broke, not from weakness, but from release. For days she had held it together, carrying grace in the face of humiliation. Now she could finally cry. Within days, the airline made sweeping changes. Mandatory anti-bias training, revised protocols, new leadership. The flight attendant resigned, but the deeper issue lingered, far beyond one employee's actions. Because the real question wasn't just about one flight. It was about every moment like it. Every time someone is judged, questioned, or mistreated for the color of their skin. Maya's story sparked something. Across social media, thousands began sharing their own experiences of flying while black, shopping while black, simply existing while black. Each story different, yet painfully familiar. The collective truth was impossible to ignore. But Maya didn't stop there. She turned her pain into purpose, partnering with advocacy groups, pushing for stronger diversity policies in aviation, and speaking publicly about dignity, motherhood, and race. She used her voice not to shame, but to awaken. When asked during an interview why she chose forgiveness over revenge, she said quietly, "Because my child deserves to grow up in a world that heals, not one that hates." Her words rippled far beyond the story itself. Schools discussed her courage. Churches, universities, and workplaces used her experience as a mirror. A reminder that racism doesn't always wear a uniform or shout its name. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it smiles, And that's what makes it so dangerous. For every Maya, there are countless others who never get recorded, never go viral, never get justice. They just carry the pain and move on, because that's what they've always had to do. But Maya's story reminded the world of something essential. Silence protects no one, and dignity is not a privilege, it's a right. The world eventually moved on to the next headline. But for those who watched, who felt the sting of her humiliation, something stayed. A question. A reckoning. A realization that behind every news clip is a beating heart, a mother, a child, a life. And as Maya stood before a crowd months later, stronger, braver, no longer afraid, she ended her speech with words that silenced the room. I was kicked off a plane for holding my baby, but now I'm holding the mic. And as long as I'm speaking, the world will listen. Her story wasn't just about one woman's pain. It became a lesson in empathy, in accountability, and in the quiet power of standing tall, even when the world tries to make you small. Because racism isn't a headline, it's a reality. One that we must all face together. So the question isn't whether Maya's story moved us. The question is, will it change us?